As the resident X-Men fan on this channel, I want to say thank you very much for coming to your evaluation. That's right, we're going to be evaluating the current status of X-Men in the post-Hickman era, given that this whole enterprise is the result of his efforts. Without Hickman, is it holding water? I figured we'd finally put those feet to the flame, so to speak. Maybe drown out some of the overwhelming conversation that's going on book to book, week to week, event to event, and instead get a comprehensive numerical designation. Is it successful? Is it working?
One, I've always pitched that since the Dawn of X launched, that there has been a book for everyone.
Yes.
And that there is a genre difference between the titles that they launched, and they launched so many, starting under that umbrella of Dawn of X. And it's going to take you a little time to get to know those books, and so I think as you got to know them, you might be like, you know what, maybe this one isn't for me. There's also, as we got more into this, it was all consuming. There were so many titles going on,
It's
and
true.
with the nature of what we talk about on this channel, I felt like a lot of my time was dedicated to that. And since this isn't my 100% job, it was becoming more difficult for me to be able to join in on conversations about other things that were going on either the other side,
yes,
or even within Marvel itself. So
True.
I found myself being I have to trim back here and there. Teams changed, and
creative teams
changed,
and the teams themselves.
And I didn't like it any longer.
Right.
And
I think
at the core of it, that's a big factor for a lot of people.
Absolutely, yeah.
But for me, I do have three reasons for
Okay.
why I might have dropped off on certain books.
Sure.
It still feels like there's so many X books, but if you actually look at the data, there's fewer than there were when we started this.
yes,
And yet it feels like I'm oh my gosh, wait, what?
it's still overwhelming. Would you say it's still overwhelming?
I'd say it's less overwhelming now, especially now that I really kind of took a look at the list, and I was like, you know what? It's not as many. I'm still reading quite a few of them, and I know new series are going to be launching that I'm definitely going to be checking out.
Yes.
It's not like when we first started. When we first started, there was a flurry of content that they put out there, and we wanted to be able to talk about them, but also it was an exciting time. If you hadn't been following the X-Men like I had not been, this was a really cool place to jump on.
So before we get into your evaluation, we actually asked some of the audience out there on Twitter what they thought about the current status quo of X-Men in a post-Hickman world.
Right.
You posted that on Twitter the other day.
I did.
We got some results. It's not, of course, it's only a sample size.
Yeah.
I think it's a little over 700 people voted for this one.
It's almost 800.
800, nice.
I gave them 4 options. I gave them the just as great option.
Just as great as it was with Hickman.
Right, some good, some bad.
Middle of the road.
And then I asked in a follow-up tweet, hey, if you could let me know.
Which ones are good, which ones are bad.
Yeah, obviously not everybody did that homework, but we did get a sample of that as well. It's going downhill. I was trying to be
That's
kind.
another option. Sure.
And then I never liked it. I wanted to give an option for people who felt like they wanted to participate in the poll,
Right.
but maybe never jumped onto the ComicPop era. Because there are people who straight up just never got on, didn't like the idea of it,
Yes.
and have stayed away. And I totally understand that.
On
So
our
I wanted
sister
to.
show Off the Rack, people are very vocal about the fact that they don't like the island concept at all.
Yeah, it
they have
creeps
no
them
interest
out.
in it. Yep.
Creeps them out. And
No element to it that they like, and they're just waiting for it to end.
Yeah, exactly. So out of our over 700 voters, just as great, 14%.
Okay, so 14% of those polled thought that it was just as good as Hickman. Pretty low.
Not the lowest. Some good, some bad came in at 52%. A lot of people right now are feeling, just like anything, that I think it's a very adult and moderate response.
Yes. And it is a middle-of-the-road answer. So 50% is actually not bad.
But and had we had a poll like this when it was the Hickman era, I think we would have seen
similar results.
I think the second place would have changed.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think we would have had exactly the same first place, which is the some good, some bad at 52%. It's going downhill 24%.
So more people polled felt that it was going downhill post-Hickman than thought it was exactly as good as when Hickman was in charge. Or at least when Hickman was guiding the ship.
Yep, and I never liked it. It came in at about 11%. So that was obviously our lowest one there, but pretty close to the just as great.
Yeah, almost as many people felt it was just as good as Hickman, or that they never wanted to read it in the first place.
Exactly.
I wish we'd done this on the community tab for this channel. I think we would have gotten a lot more.
Yeah, well, I think what we could do then is we should, after you watch this video, we will probably put a poll out like that, because I'd love to revisit this as we enter in the fall of X in the summer.
Yeah.
So we will be completing the Reign of X leading up to summer of 2023, and then we'll be starting the fall of X. And I think it'd be kind of cool to revisit this to see how that goes.
Yes, especially as we dovetail into the next Dawn of X era, Hawks and Pox era event.
Yeah.
Because I don't think Axe counts. given that it is technically like a Marvel event. That included multiple teams. You can't...
It does and it doesn't, because if you look at listings for that,
it was X-Men.
It's X-Men.
Right, but the Avengers did feature heavily into it.
The issue is that you have Kieran Gillen, who is a ex-writer now, an ex-team writer, but had been writing up to that point the Eternals.
Yes.
And so it's like really kind of an Eternals event, but you can't sell that.
Nope.
In that sense.
Make it an X-Men book.
But a lot of things... Significant changes happen to the Eternals and the X-Men, and less so the Avengers, I would say.
Yes, absolutely.
And so I say it's less a Marvel event and more like it's really Eternals. So we can't say that. We're going to call it
an X-Men
kind
event.
of an X-Men event.
Just like Dark Web, technically it might also include the X-Men, but we wouldn't necessarily call it an X event.
No,
it does feature heavily X-Men characters.
Heavily. For a lot of people, this is a turning point.
Absolutely. Well, we wouldn't be having this conversation if things were just hunky-dory.
That's right.
The theater of this is we're giving the Post-Hickman Era a report card. We're going to try and figure out what the numbers are and whether this is a pass or a fail.
Okay, I think before we jump into that, I want to put some parameters out there about what we're calling Post-Hickman.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are like, not a lot of people, I have seen people say, oh, technically it's not Post-Hickman yet because he still helped to do X, Y, Z.
Right.
Now, I disagree with that.
Yes. Yeah, we should also, we should address the parameters, you're right, because I also have heard rumors and speculation and discussion about Hickman's involvement or lack thereof. I've certainly, I got the impression very largely that Hickman kind of severed ties, that he made his decision, wrote Inferno, and that was kind of his hand-dusting moment.
Yeah.
But we're still seeing stragglers and holdouts that are saying, no, they're still adhering to the original plan.
Sure.
That roadmap that Hickman wrote out is still being followed closely. I can tell you, Hickman said that is not true.
Yeah, but where I would say it really begins is if you want to just nail it down to between Dawn, Destiny, and Reign, it's Destiny.
Destiny of X is where
is
it's
really...
all... without the lifeguard.
Yeah, because Reign of X, Inferno wasn't the end-all, be-all. There were some things that come after that. Technically, I think that 10 Lives and 10 Deaths of Wolverine falls as an in-between. And in fact, I think it was put together in that way. I don't know how I missed this while it was happening, and it just seems so obvious. So I'm sure everybody out there who saw or noticed this and weren't just what is happening post-Inferno? Because I think that's really, for me, all I could think about was we had Trial of Magneto, Inferno, and I was like, what is happening in this world that I've really come to love?
Yeah.
In terms of not even just, if something ends, it ends, and that sucks. And you can be upset about that, but it just felt so...
a little directionless.
Yeah, all over the place. And then we launch right into 10 Lives and 10 Deaths, and I'm realizing now, as we were putting this, conversation together, that I think they did that on purpose to try to mimic Hox and Pox.
Yes.
I say Destiny of X is the time period we had to look at.
Okay, so we'll only judge from Destiny.
I think that's fair. I mean, trust me, I've got some things to say about everything up to that point too, because it wasn't always a slam dunk. There were definitely things within Dawn and Reign that I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
And not everything within the Destiny of X timeframe started in Destiny of X.
That's true.
So we have to consider that as well. But let's start from Destiny of X.
Yeah. One of the biggest hallmarks of the Hickman era was a adherence to quality, particularly when it came to art. Does the art from Destiny onwards hit the heights of the Hickman period?
In the original Dawn of X, there were so many books out there that were coming out, and those books had a wide variety of artists.
Yes.
Some stronger than others.
But no less suited to their titles.
No, and a lot of them actually kind of came into their own, I felt on their titles, and there was almost this cohesive look across the brand of art, which...
I'm sure that had a lot to do with design.
Right. Well, yes, but I would say... there was a certain feel that a lot of the books had, and where it was you knew you're looking at an X book. Now, we do have to put a big old asterisk, because then you had people like Rod Rice in there too, which brings something totally different to the table, but suited to the book they're on, 100%. Right. So I would say there's definitely a difference in feeling. I don't feel like it's quite as cohesive, and some of these books feel a little... middling.
Disjointed? Oh, middling, okay.
Where it's just kind of okay.
Okay.
They're not, artists are I'm getting the job done, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it also doesn't have the same sparkle. And I don't know if it's just because we're in the third section of these X books, and maybe I'm a little jaded to it. I just feel at times that some of the art has been fine.
Are there any standouts in today's period that I'd say, or you would say, are around the same heights as the previous.
It's hard to say that because, like Rod Reiss is
He's still working there.
He's still working there, and I feel like he's only gotten better.
Yeah.
The more he's been doing with these. Not that he was
Ever
like bad.
No, no.
It's just he's just been continuously getting stronger and better.
Yeah.
Valeria Schiti showed up not here.
No.
But I feel like
gotten stronger.
Has just been an incredible addition to the X run. Anytime Pepe Larraz shows up.
Well, Pepe Larraz maintains that continuity of the previous.
I do like Josh Cassara. It's a different feel.
Yeah.
They were on X-Men for a little bit. Adam Kubert on Wolverine has been a treat, but that's not like something new that came in here. I can't really think of an artist who I've been like, wow.
Like Head and Shoulders.
Yeah, brand new. I mean, Carlos Gomez on Exterminators, they've got a really solid like comic book style of art.
Yeah, but for a very divisive title.
But if you just look at just the art alone, I think they're doing a good job.
Like they're nailing that title.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to give a shout out to Stefano Caselli as well on X-Men Red.
Oh,
doing a great job. Sure. I feel like, so am I giving it a letter grade or a
give me a letter grade.
I feel like the art right now, we're at like a B minus.
B minus.
Yeah.
Okay.
It hasn't been exciting.
No. And that's a big question that is actually really important for all of this. For the second one, story. The story. And when I say story, I mean like, is it credible? Does it hold water? Am I engaged? Is the story, the overall story of, Destiny Onward?
During Dawn and Reign, you could tell there was some invisible bracket.
Yeah.
That was containing everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, we got hints at it. We got, peeks at it occasionally.
Yes.
And outside of that now, I feel like the bracket is gone. And it feels instead like we're just going from event to event, which technically we were doing that with the Hickman era.
Right, but we also knew that there was an invisible hand guiding us towards an inevitable conclusion.
Yes.
That was set up from the beginning.
Right. And while I appreciate the idea of a company sticking to an initiative, being like, no, let's maintain this for a little while longer. This is a new status quo. Mm-hmm. Let's not just keep changing things up. Launching into Ten of Swords, right?
Yeah.
That's the next thing. Hellfire Gala.
Yeah.
And then from Hellfire Gala, leading into Inferno.
Trial of Magneto.
We made a stop.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we're like, ooh.
That's the tripping point. Because I don't think, and it's been well established, Trial of Magneto was not going to be an event originally. It was going to be just a sub-story within the pages of another title.
Yeah.
And then became one because of Marvel Editorial, which is inevitable, and it's something you can't avoid.
Right.
Especially if you're being successful. Marvel Editorial will definitely try and help you when you're being successful.
Yes. So what I'm saying there, though, because I know we're not really talking about Dawn of X, though, was that while I was interested to see these things that we're building to, a lot of the stories that were going on in the individual titles were enough to sustain me, and it was really fun to participate in those stories, whether it be Excalibur or Hellions or X-Force or anything like that. Then watching them slowly, naturally starting to all kind of merge into something. I was like, this is really cool, right? I'm enjoying my storyline, but then also, hey, okay, we're gonna go stop over here.
Right.
These events now just feel like there's stories going on and then, something else is happening.
Right. Much more like your standard comic
And it's not
books.
every title that's happening right now that's doing that, but a lot of them seem to be like, I'm doing this thing over here and I'm doing this thing over there. And I feel like, I think they're definitely talking to each other. I think they're still having meetings. I think they're still working together.
Sure.
It just, the books feel a little more disjointed, and maybe that's a meta commentary about where we're going next, considering the next stage is called the Fall of X.
Right.
I don't know. I feel like Kieran Gillen, I know I talk about him at length. I feel like I should be a part of the Kieran Gillen fan club. But I feel like he's doing a really solid job of paying attention to everyone else's stuff. And I'm not saying he's trying to be a Hickman, because I don't think he is. No. I think he's just okay, you're doing that over there, okay, I'm going to take a concept from that, and I want my book to feel like it's tethered to everything else. He's writing Immortal X-Men. He was writing Immortal X-Men and also crafted all of X. And Immortal X-Men is one of those books that I feel has had an incredible consistency. Super engaging storyline, super interesting, really is acting like the main X title in a way, even though I do like the main X title. I really gravitate towards 3 writers, and they only really have 3 titles. The camaraderie the writers and artists felt came through on the pages of those books, and that's where I feel only 3 of those titles feel like that right now for me.
Gotcha. Okay.
And as much as that shouldn't be a criteria for judging writing and story overall for this Destiny of X time frame, it is.
It is.
For me, it is. So like, and this is my report card. So for me, that needs to be there. And I'm not saying that the other writers don't talk to each other or they don't work well together, because I have no idea. So
no, just that's how it feels.
Yeah,
it feels like
it just feels like 3 of them are like, hey,
are really working together, and the other 3 are kind of doing their own thing.
Yeah, and it's hard to judge as well, because Axe was so good, but that's one man.
Yeah.
That's one man, and it's one man working with the others. And X-Men Red was like fantastic during Axe, because I would put Dawn for me was like an A.
Yeah.
And then like Reign was like an A- to a B, and I feel like we're somewhere between a B- and a C. Only because of how disjointed it feels.
Exactly,
but we haven't completed it.
No.
Now we could come back to this at the end, like after we finish up Sinister.
They could pull a hat trick.
And like at the end of this, I could be like, holy crap, Destiny of X.
Yeah, they could pull a hat trick, but if no one's there to read it, it failed.
I mean, I guess that's true. Reign of X, the first part of it is easily an A-, and the second part of it, the ending part, that's like a C.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For a lot of it.
Well, we'll give this a C+. We'll be charitable and give it a C+ for story.
I feel bad. I don't know if that's accurate.
I mean, outliers exist.
No, it's true. Nah. Yeah.
So getting on to character, do I care or worry about these characters, or am I very aware that they're fictitious and I'm writing about their adventures?
I honestly don't think there's been that much of a dip in terms of the characters.
Yeah.
Mainly because of the fact that I'm still interested in like elements of X-Men for sure, like the main title.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, hey, Sync, what's up with that?
Right.
Right. We've had, Laura came back.
Yes, we have that new status quo, and it's very interesting.
Cyclops is, kind of like faux pas, but not faux pas.
Uh-huh.
Where he reveals the big secrets of the world. I'm like, that's interesting stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. And consistent. Like, I buy that any of these characters do and act like that. But Beast.
As much as I hate that, I hate Beast.
But
I'm so invested.
And we can't even blame the team. We can't blame Percy for Beast being like this, because Beast has been like this for almost 10 years.
Yeah, and he's taking him on this horrible natural progression.
Yes.
That's like ratcheted up, like in a way where I'm like, is that natural? Is that not natural? I am invested in that story as long as it gets a finale. I get the love of Nightcrawler thanks to Destiny of X.
Yes.
Like,
that whole era.
I know Way of X, we were leading into like Nightcrawler, but I really understand why people like gravitate towards Kurt. I think it's just been written really well, and I'm like I said, like I'm there for him.
Oh yeah.
Same thing with Legion, a character I would
never
normally be like,
he's
too OP, like, there's nothing interesting there.
Yeah.
It's too simple to just be like, and then he like does whatever, because who cares? He's got all these powers.
Yeah.
I know it's not, he's been written before, in interesting ways, but I would not typically find myself gravitating towards that character. They're doing a great job with him as well. Betsy Braddock coming back. I am more interested, as much as I love Otherworld, and I'm glad we did the whole Knights of X over there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited to see her come back and have to deal with the fall of England.
Yeah.
England no longer is an ally of Krakoa.
Right.
But she's technically their champion. I'm like, there's something there. I'm interested to see how that will go.
That's fair.
A character that I have always had a fascination with and is really getting their time in the spotlight, even though he should not be allowed to have his time in the spotlight. Mr. Sinister.
Yes.
Has been written interestingly throughout this whole thing by various writers, and consistently across titles.
Totally. We've seen
Hellions
Sinister
was
playing
obviously the place where it was like, that's
his book.
And Zeb Wells set a tone for Sinister that I think everybody agreed on.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, like every writer who's touched him, whether it be through Dr. Stasis or through actual Mr. Sinister clones, he's a character that I'm like, yes, I cannot wait to see what they're going to do with him. So I have to give this one pretty high marks.
Sure.
I feel like this is easily an A-.
I think you're right. I'll give it a solid A.
Okay.
Because it is, we have, the characters have not diminished. We haven't lost something with the characters. I think if people love these characters and they read them regardless of, quality dips in writing or art, they're all still on board for those characters. If you love Storm, you're going to keep reading X-Men Red. If you love Magneto, sorry for those Axe readers out there. But no doubt he'll be back.
But that was like, that's another excellent example of Magneto being super interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, it was cut short.
Yes.
But like super interesting moments for Eric.
The only other problem we have to talk about is Moira McTaggart.
We do.
And the complete character assassination there.
But that didn't technically happen in this. That happened in the preludes.
Right. Right. But yeah.
I think if we're going to talk about taking notes from Hickman's playbook, you know, the phalanx, the robot, the android, the whatever, ties to X-Men just in general, the techno-organic virus, like with anything like that, like it's not been a good thing for them typically.
That's true.
Although you think of like the Danger Room and it's like, wow, that's great.
Yeah. But even then, the Danger Room gained sentience and became a villain.
That's true. There's something there.
Yeah.
That, like there are many things that could kill the X-Men, but more than likely, or
it'll be a robot.
It'll be a robot of some way, shape, or form. And now that she's become one, I don't love it necessarily. I do wonder if a competent writer can't make it into something though. That's what I'm wondering. Like,
well, and we have at least 3 of them.
We did this thing.
Yeah.
Can someone take it and make it worthwhile doing?
So but you have hope for the future. Oh, geez, that's.
Yeah.
Connectivity. Does everything fit together like it did? Because that was a big hallmark of it. Like the reality is, whether like the fact that the Hickman era created a slew of books and anybody could read it. You also, at least it seemed like the trap of it was, well, they will all converge, and we will get you all at some point or another.
Right. Well, and
I think that happened with Ten of Swords.
I think that was the genius of Ten of Swords because.
But also the folly of Ten of Swords because a lot of people were unhappy.
Because it was too many books.
Too many books, but also
it was
not enough swords.
Can we talk about really quickly why it was too many books? It was too many books because it was too many titles, but it was during that time in which they were having shipping issues thanks to lockdown.
Yes.
And so it was too many books because things would
too
randomly
many books at once.
oh my gosh,
everything
came out.
Yeah, here's 8 or 9 books.
Because they were able to get things like from the past printed and sent out. They're like, oh no. They were playing with a title talking about tarot cards,
a lot of esoteric stuff that isn't necessarily quintessential to the X-Men.
No, and has a lot less to do with actual swords.
I mean, there are swords.
There are swords.
Don't get me wrong. There are swords appear.
There are swords.
And they are not necessarily hitting each other.
There's even one tremendous sword.
Yeah, there's a gigantic sword. Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
It's pretty dope.
Yeah.
But I thought that was pretty smart. If you were following along, you had to pick up the other titles, so it gave you an opportunity maybe to meet some characters.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we have crossovers.
That's why you do that type of thing.
Yeah.
Having these conversations are important, and so hopefully you have folk in your life, either at your comic book store or online, to have these conversations with, because even sitting here, I'm like,
oh, that's putting another spin on things.
I feel like the reason it feels disjointed is because it is in like the publishing line right now. Yeah. It's a little all over the place. However, you could also say it feels disjointed because in the wake of Reign of X, it feels like Krakoa's leadership is disjointed because it used to be like whatever Eric and Charles said was kind of it. It still does feel like a few of the writers are like, hey, we're doing something here.
Yes.
Hey, that's really cool. It doesn't really have anything to do with my books, and I'm not going to go out of my way to make it have to do with my book.
Okay, because like it does, and the reason your book exists is so that it would be part of it. There's a literal, visual connectivity through design that links our books together.
Yes.
You can't pretend like they're not connected.
I understand that, but like Cy Spurrier and
Ewing and
Kieran Gillen are both using Nightcrawler a lot, and they seem to be paying attention to what one another is doing because it's like we got this character link, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if, they're always worried about what Wolverine's doing in every book. Could this be actually
like intentional,
somewhat done intentionally, where it's just like it's making you feel that way?
I mean, the reality is, even if it isn't, the right writer can make it look like that.
Sure, and people in the future
will know.
Will read it potentially just like that.
Exactly. Although I doubt they'll probably read the whole damn thing.
Oh yeah, no.
And finally, resonance. Do I care at all?
If you had asked me that at the end of Reign,
right,
I would have given a D.
Yeah.
100%.
I think that a lot of people gave it a D and quit.
Yeah. No, at the end of Reign, like Inferno has happened, Trial of Magneto has happened, we've just launched into 10 Lives and 10 Deaths, easily D-. It was real bad for me.
Yeah.
To the point where I was like, I think I'm done
with X-Men.
entirely.
Yeah.
Some of these writers just kept plugging along. You know, like I said, shout out to Ben Percy, over 27 issues of X-Force.
Yes. And from the beginning, like didn't change it up too much.
Just
kept
been him.
one story.
Yeah, same thing with Wolverine. He's just been continuing to go with that series.
Yeah.
And you know, there is something to be said for that type of consistency. Even if it's not hot and sexy, and he's not necessarily dealing with Beast right now, it's consistent and it feels comforting.
Yeah.
Even if I wasn't on X-Force all the time, the fact that book hasn't constantly changed or like been, you know, all right, we're going to end it, but then we're going to relaunch it, or we're going to change the title, or we're going to do this. It's just been going. I'm like, that's nice.
Yeah.
That does not necessarily make me care. Although, again, the Beast thing, I do care about that.
Right.
For sure. I definitely feel like I don't care quite the same way. I don't want to say even as much, but in the same way that I did when this all started. Because again, you got those, it's brand new. Look at it. It's super exciting when you first get it. It's like, wow, look at this thing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And then after like the first, I don't know, call
year.
it 6 months to a year, it's like, this is still great, but like, all right.
Yeah.
And then give it another year after that. You're like, I mean, it works, and I don't even think about it necessarily anymore.
Yeah.
Is that the car's fault? No. Part of that is just you've gotten used to it.
It's part of your life now.
Yeah. So I do feel like as I've gotten used to the quality that came out of Dawn, and even into the beginning of Reign, you know, I judge things more harshly at times when it comes to X-Men, because I'm like, well, we had this.
Right. I know it can be better.
Overall, I personally care quite a bit about some of these plot lines, but I care about them more from the moral quandaries that have come out of Krakoa.
Yeah.
And so if that's not something that people are interested in, and they're more like, when's Apocalypse coming back?
I mean, that's the main question everyone has. And it's like, well, at the end of Ten of Swords, like, why would he?
He's got everything he wanted. But, you know, like I do care about where it's going for Kurt. I do care about where it's going for Legion. I do care about Arakko and Storm's involvement there. And I'm super interested in what's going to happen with Sinister, since he's been such a role.
Yeah, he
had such a role to play.
In everything.
And he had a big role in terms of just getting Krakoa going.
Yeah. There
is part of me that's like, is this the last thing that's going to tie back to that? Is this the last exciting thing that's going to happen?
Yeah.
Is just for
I think
for
this
Sinister.
is the second to last, because I think that there's no way they won't do the Apocalypse event. So I think Sins of Sinister is going to lead directly into the Apocalypse event, and then after that, they'll go, okay, well, whatever.
Right.
You know?
Then I would have to give it a B-. I think that's like if I was looking at this, and I think some people would give it a C+.
I think you're right. I think it's more charitable to say B- just because it is.
Yeah, but again, I'm pouring a lot of my personal.
But you like a lot of it, so you can
like
say
a lot
no,
of
it's
it.
not quite as bad as all that. But
no, but like if you were coming from what we were doing, it's a shift.
Yes.
It's a big shift in terms of the types of stories we're telling.
Yes, I agree
and
with that.
so I understand people being like, this isn't what I came here for.
Right.
I'm like, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. You were here for like this cool,
this huge
creepy
ride.
island ride where it was just like, wow, what if the X-Men somehow made it work for them?
Yep.
And like, let's explore these stories, like I've said before, with characters who'd never interact like this necessarily.
Yeah. No, I agree.
It was an incredible opportunity. And they've been gifted, these creators have been gifted this additional time, and I just don't want to see it squandered. And I don't think all the creative teams are.
No. Finally, extra bonus points. Are you excited for what's happening next?
Are we talking about Sins of Sinister?
I guess so.
Then yeah.
Yeah.
I am so excited for that. Fall of X? I don't know.
Based on the tallies that we have here, your score is an 83 with the additional bonus points.
That's a B.
That's a solid. That's a B-.
It's a B-.
That is a charitable B-, but it's a solid B. You've earned that B-.
Yeah.
I think that's very charitable. I think people are just. I think having put the time and thought into it, I think that is actually an earned number.
Yeah.
I think that off the cuff, people would say, "What? D+? F."
I think a lot of people would give it a C because it's middle ground based on what we saw.
Incredibly middling based on the overall feel.
Which is like.
It's pretty consistent with people.
But that's often very damning. When you come in that middling, when you come in that like middle of the road, that means that no one has a real passion for it.
That's right. Yeah, it's worse to be forgotten than it is to be hated in the comic book world.
And maybe that is the issue, though, with having so many titles you have to consider.
Yeah.
And we don't even have that many. Like when I really went down the line,
it wasn't as many as
there
we
is
thought.
not so much.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, X Corp doesn't exist anymore, and like, you know, Dawn of X had its like failures as well. I wasn't a big Fallen Angels fan. I do feel like though that without there being so many titles, that there aren't quite as many niche books, and I do wonder. It seemed like when this first launched, it was like you could do no wrong. Like, whatever, make a book. Who cares? Let's throw it out there.
Well, I think that's where X Corp came from.
It doesn't feel like that. It feels like now they're writing books and then they'll be sitting there going like, oh, wait a minute, can we do something with that?
Yeah, that's exactly how they're doing it.
And I think that mindset is there for me now, meta reading it all because of Trial of Magneto.
Yeah, Trial of Magneto is like the biggest
is that's where it's like,
misstep.
is that what we're doing now?
Yeah.
And I don't think all the writers are doing that, and I don't necessarily blame the writers for it.
But they are hostage to the Marvel system, and you know, especially because Hickman was the powerhouse behind it that could say, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
You know? And now, do they have anybody there who can stand up to Marvel Editorial and say, hey, we really have like a plan here and we're going to execute it, and we don't care if like the numbers slip a little bit. We promise it'll all like make up in the end. Like, I don't think so.
Right.
I think that's one of the biggest like meta problems with this entire line is like losing the powerhouse and not gaining one as a result.
But like that initial like launch, you know, like I said, it was something brand new, and it put a lot of people on the same footing. Even if a lot of like there are so many individuals out there who know so much lore about the X-Men, and this didn't fully throw it away.
No.
It certainly did to some degree. You know, it just said like, hey, don't get rid of that, but you don't need that info right now.
Exactly.
You might though.
Right, and it might help you deepen your like love and fun.
Right, or your appreciation of it, where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe these two characters hanging out together because normally, blah. Like, it felt like there was something for everyone, and so even if people coming into it might have felt like, hey, you just threw away everything I know, it's like, no, I really didn't. I just put a pause on that.
Yeah, and in fact, we're only adding to it. Like, there's a lot of adding because, you know, like we unto death, we can literally bring back every single character that's ever existed.
Exactly, and you can see conversations that could happen now
that you never could.
Or you didn't think would ever be able to happen. And you put people who were new to the X-Men, or like, hey, I know X-Men from maybe a couple of books I read, or from movies, or from shows. Like, that's my knowledge of the X-Men. I'm going to try this out. And
X-Men fans, great or small, put them on equal footing.
Exactly. So that was a fun community element. And I feel like we're still in that element. Those of us are still reading and part of it. Because
it's getting to smaller.
It is getting smaller, but I feel like we're all in the same boat where we're just like, I really enjoyed that, and I'm really hopeful for what comes next. And maybe I'm not reading every single book, but like I like my small amount. Or like, you know, some people are like, I'm only reading one. Some people are like, I'm reading them all. Because they're they just
can't get enough.
They want all of it.
Well, and the fact is, not every Marvel fan is an X-Men fan, and not every X-Men fan is a Marvel fan. Like, you can have people who are like, oh, I'm a huge DC fan and I read X-Men.
Yeah.
Like, you can keep X-Men as like a separate universe practically of readers.
Yep.
But yeah, 83, not bad. And
like I said, a generous 83.
Generous 83, but also I think earned based on like, you know, debate and discussion. But let us know in the comments down below what you think the grade for the current crop of X-Men deserves, and we'll look forward to seeing more in the Sins of Sinister and the future of X-Men in the Fall of X. So maybe we'll do another one of these sometime and talk about it. Maybe we'll revisit this thing.
I'd love to.
Because, of course, you know, report cards don't stop.
No, they don't.
Another semester comes along. So I want to thank you so much. I want to thank Tiffany for giving your insight into the X-Men world, one that I left some time ago. And we'll see you guys next time here on this channel with more. I'm Sal.
I'm Tiffany.
So long, everybody.
Bye.